Hey, what's going on, man?
How you doing?
How are you?
Good.
Episode 5 of the Sonic Road. Here we are. Before we get started, just want to say thanks, me and Brian collectively. Thank you for listening to episode 4 and episode 3 with Christian Powers from All the Witches and Kyle Shutt from the Sword. You guys showed up in full force. Couldn't be happier with that. Kyle was a badass dude. Great guy, awesome to talk to. Christian, also really good dude. Gave us some really good insights on Fortune Child and All the Witches. Sword's going out on tour very soon. They have gigs sporadically booked around, looks like Texas. I don't think they're going outside of Texas yet, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah, more and more dates will show up for those guys as they move along through 2025. So we're grateful for everybody that's listened. Like I said, thank you again. But before we get started on episode 5, I have a couple of announcements for Screaming Engines, my rock and roll band. We have 3 shows coming up. First one is Friday, April 18th at Musica in Akron, Ohio. Great venue. Come on out if you're in the area. The second one is May 16th in Lakewood, Ohio, at the Winchester Tavern, right there, Lakewood on Detroit. We're playing with Disciple of the Garden, so that's going to be a real banger. Come on out for that one. And then last but not least, Friday, June 13th, we are with the amazing rock and roll band Handsome Jack out of New York. These guys are fantastic. It's kind of like a funky blues rock band. They kind of remind me of maybe like some CCR, you know, that kind of real groovy rock and roll. They write really good songs. They make their own records, go on and tour a lot. They actually hit Ohio quite a bit, but we're privileged to get to play with those guys on June 13th. So that'll be at Jilly's Music Room in Akron, Ohio. So come out to those shows, support some local music, support some independent bands, man. And one more shameless self-promotion for me. Screaming Engines has our new video out on YouTube. The song is called 4 Lifetimes. It's officially out. It was filmed by our good friend Dave Wilson. So a local artist, great guy, very talented. The video turned out really well and we're really proud of it. So check that out on YouTube at Screaming Engines Official. And what about you, my man?
Announcement coming. I'm not going to do it yet, but it's on the horizon. It's close.
Irons in the fire.
It is. It's on.
Irons in the fire.
So-
Right on. Yeah. So there's a lot going on. So we're going to be more and more busy as the year goes on. So there's going to be a lot more episodes of this podcast, a lot of live music between me and you, all original rock and roll, man. We couldn't be more proud to do it. So whenever you hear our names, come on out and support. So that's all I'll say about that. And support any of your local bands that you really dig, man. It really helps. So just go to a show, like their stuff on the socials, share it, subscribe anywhere. Subscribe to the Sonic Road podcast on YouTube and then hit that notification button so you guys know when we have new content on there. So, okay, enough of that. So, this episode here, my man, it's epic, number 1.
Mhm.
Number 2, it's a mega episode. It's about an hour and a half long. The reason why is it's with 2 guests. It's with multi-platinum producer Dave Hillis, and simultaneously with his good friend that he has worked with in the past. His name is Dave Krusen. He is the rock and roll drummer, best known probably for working on the first Pearl Jam record. He played all the drums on that record. Seattle guy, and then he went on to go play with many different artists after that. Son of Man, Unified Theory with the Blind Melon guys, and a little band called Candlebox. So he's played on a couple records with them and done a lot of touring with them as well. So Dave Krusen is a rock and roll Hall of Famer. So that was pretty cool.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, very humble guy, very talented man. Couldn't be more excited to have him on this podcast. I mean, Pearl Jam back in the day, and I know we've talked about it already on the podcast, but Pearl Jam was a big band in our years coming up, and that record is just completely monumental. So it's a double Dave podcast, Dave Hillis and Dave Krusen. They worked together on 10. Dave Hillis was the engineer on 10 under the producer Rick Perisher. who has sadly passed away. But these guys couldn't be more gracious to come on our podcast and talk. We talked for about an hour and a half. There's so many really good stories. A lot of things. I mean, I had a lot of questions for them. Didn't even get to them because I mean, we were just talking. So it was quite an epic conversation. Those guys had a lot of stories to share, a lot of memories to share, and a lot of experiences too. There's even some stories about the legendary producer Eddie Kramer that Mr. Hillis worked with, or well, I don't know if he worked with. I might be misspeaking there, but he was working at Electric Ladyland and kind of bumped into him and had a conversation. So that story's in the podcast. Well, some Jimi Hendrix stuff. So yeah, man, it was really cool. Yeah,
Big deal.
so that's just about it, man. This is a long one, so I don't want to sit here and ramble too long. Dude, is there anything you want to say?
No, like I said, announcement coming soon. We'll touch on that when it's ready.
Rock and roll bands. That's what we do here. Rock and roll, heavy metal, till the day we die. All right, this is episode 5 of the Sonic Road podcast with Mr. Dave Hillis and Mr. Dave Krusen.
How long has it been since you guys have seen each other or talked to each other?
5-6 years, something like that.
What'd we do last? I'm trying to remember.
I played in Pittsburgh with Candlebox.
Oh, right.
in 20. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was 2017.
Yeah, that sounds about. Yes, yeah, sounds about
16,
right.
17. We played a couple times.
It would have been because I came out here in 17 and I just got out here, I think. So yeah,
Okay,
probably
yeah.
17.
That makes sense.
2017. Where'd you guys play?
Yeah.
At? You remember?
Was it the Craft House or something like that?
Yeah,
I think it was. I think it was called the Craft House. I think.
Okay.
But yeah, then when was the last time we worked together?
Probably at Wishbone.
At Wishbone, or did we do that one thing up at London Bridge?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Because you know why I
That
know that? I
girl.
remembered. Yeah, and I just remembered that because Eric had sent me a video clip of it. I went, oh yeah, I forgot all about that session.
That's funny. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, Dave, I think I saw you with Candlebox in like 1998 or 99. It was on the Happy Pills tour.
Cool.
It was in Cleveland at the Odeon. And I had seen Candlebox a bunch before then, but that was the best show I ever saw with them. It was amazing. You guys, and they had added an extra guitar player, I remember, but that show was so cool,
Probably
so
on.
fun. Sold
Yeah.
out. It was like a weekend show. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was some fun times for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Are you in Cleveland?
I'm in Cleveland, yeah. Cleveland proper.
Sweet. Right on. Love Cleveland.
Yeah, it's a great town. Yeah, I actually just moved out here like I don't know, 6 months ago or something with my girl. Just been getting to know the city a little bit. I was down in Akron, so
Okay.
just getting familiar with the town. There's actually a lot going on out here. It's pretty cool. It's a good time. Oh, but we'll just jump right in, I guess. We'll have to talk about the Pearl Jam record, but let's kind of backtrack a little bit, and we'll talk about everything. Prior to the 90s, let's start there. Let's kind of paint a picture of what Seattle was like in the late 80s in the music scene, just to kind of set it up for everybody that's not as hip to the details. I think you both can probably chime in on that.
Dave was rocking and Mace was playing then, right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Yep. Like, geez, we were out and about.
Late
84, 85, when we kind of really started playing like Seattle and things like that. But then we had a record come out and then we started playing like in the Bay Area because that's where all the metal stuff was blowing up. So, yeah, I was running then, and then late 80s I was doing, after 87 we broke up on a band called Mace. And then I was like I had a bunch of different projects. I was just trying to find what my next move was going to be. And then right at the end of the 80s there, I started working at London Bridge in 89.
Oh, 89.
Yeah.
Cool.
I worked there in 86 in Agent Boys band. Steve Fisher, or no, Rick Fisher. Do you know Rick Fisher?
Yeah, I know who that is.
He was working with us and he brought us in there and it was brand new. It was really
Yeah, I
cool.
was going to say that's when they first opened.
Yeah, it was like 86, 87. We did 2 different sessions in there. And that band I was in, we played like I was doing anywhere from 3 to 5 nights a week, like the club scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah, playing a
Wow.
lot. That was like my job when I was 20, 21, 22, all that
Yeah, I
era.
was going into London Bridge before that too, because I think I was there for a Queensryche autograph signing.
Really?
And then, yeah,
No,
I think that
really?
was, yeah. And then, actually with the band Mace too, we almost did our third record there. And, so I was meeting with, and then, so, but this was before I started working there actually, but, and I did a demo there with a band called Suicide Bride that I was trying to do. So I had like the 80s were, actually, I was doing anything and everything I could in Seattle at the time.
Right. Quite a
Yeah.
bit different back then. Did you guys work on any projects before the Pearl Jam record, or bump into each other and all?
Well, Son of Man, your band.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because
Well,
some of
that was
my bands
before
were.
me. That was
Was it?
before
Was
I
it?
was in the band in '92 for a while. We
Oh,
did some
okay.
stuff for Epic. We did a couple different we did word of mouth. We were in there, the Triangle place in Ballard.
Right, right. Oh, when it was called Word of Mouth. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
uh we did stuff there. But yeah, those are friends of mine, Son of Man,
Yeah,
like
because I know
they
one of my bands that played a number of shows because I have flyers still that have, I don't know, I think my band's Suicide Bride or something. Kind of.
yeah, they were playing with everybody. That was right. Yeah, the Seattle, the 80s, it was like there was a lot of punk bands that
Totally.
were great and some great metal bands.
Right. And that's the whole fusion of it. That's what we were doing. We
Right.
were, we were so influenced and hanging out with the Accused all the time. And the Accused were like kind of digging what we were doing metal wise. And I was like,
Nice.
we just kind of stole from each other on
Right.
purpose. We played shows together and hung out together all the time. But the 80s was totally happening in Seattle. I mean, there was
Yeah.
so much music and so many bands, so many places to play. And
Yeah.
really it just hadn't gelled yet. Nobody had labeled, everybody was like crossing and fusion everything together
Right.
until 90s came and somebody labeled it grunge.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
but everybody was
remember.
kind of searching for what they were doing and everything was open to interpretation.
Yeah. I was a young kid in the 80s, and I what I remember is that the genres were so damn specific, like you couldn't cross over. There were the stoners and the preppy people and the pop stuff. And then somewhere in Seattle, you guys just started
Yeah, it
throwing
was
everything in the pot.
yeah, there would be bills, right, Dave, with like there'd be punk bands, metal bands, and everybody in between. Like they're just everything just started bleeding into each other. I think
Yeah.
that's how I remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it still like that, Dave? Are you're still up there, aren't you?
I just moved back a year ago, but
Yeah.
I'm in Gig Harbor. I'm in a little sleepy fishing village where I grew up,
Yeah.
about an hour outside of Seattle. I've been to Seattle like 3 times. I
Oh
went to
yeah.
a baseball game. I went to a show a couple days ago. Some friends of mine were playing, and I'd never seen Star Anna. She blew my mind. That was great. They were so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I haven't
Oh,
been out at all, really. I mean, I just built this studio, so I've been working here at my house, you know what I mean? And I've been to LA more than I have Seattle.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been to New York, I've been to LA, I've been to see I really that's the first night I've gone to see music was a few nights ago. But I'm gonna start getting out and going and seeing some bands and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I saw that post. That band was good. What was the name of them?
Oh
I'll have to
yeah. Star Anna. She's a
Okay.
great singer.
yeah, I've seen her back. She's been around for a while. I
They
saw her back in the
they
Yeah.
day.
were ripping, man. Very, very good.
Yeah, and Andy Stoller, and Aaron on drums. He's a great drummer, and Andy's a great bass player. And I met him recently through my friend Rami Jaffe, who plays keys for the Foo Fighters.
Oh, okay.
They when they played last summer, he's like, "Come up and we'll get dinner." And I met Andy then, and I'd love to work with him. He's an amazing bass player. He sat in when Mike Inez couldn't do, or he did some heart gigs or whatever when Andy
Mm.
couldn't do it. So I guess Andy plays with heart a lot. But I think he plays a lot of people. He's great.
You built that studio in your house there. You're just doing studio sessions out of the house. That's what a lot of drummers are doing now.
I've done a couple things for some other projects I'm doing, and then just my own stuff.
Yeah, cool. I just checked out the new song. We'll get to that. That's a fun little jam there. So we'll dive into the Pearl Jam record. I know we got to talk about it, and then we'll keep going. But I guess there's the famous the Mama San demo from 10 that everyone pretty much knows about at this point. But a question that I have was there actual pre-production for the 10 sessions with Rick before or after that demo?
Yeah.
And how long did that take?
Wait, the demos, there were 2 demo sessions. We did a first round. I don't remember when exactly it was. Pretty early. It was like we started working like, I don't know, late September, October. And so it was probably a month and a half later, if that, maybe a month later, we went and did some demos. And then we did some more demos. Dave, were you there for those
Yeah, there's 2 sets of
first round?
demos. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we did like 2 months later or a month
I
later.
think it was like a month later.
Yeah. And that's what Alive is from. Alive and Just a Girl. There's a few from that. I think Wash.
The
Oh yeah,
Beatles cover.
Wash. Yeah, the Beatles cover. That single that we did.
Oh
Alive.
yeah,
Right.
I forgot about that one.
And the Beatles cover. And then there's a couple other.
I remember you
that-
guys were playing it. I didn't even realize it was a Beatles cover for a while. I was like, wait.
They changed the lyrics.
Yeah, I didn't
Was it
even
hard to
know
imagine?
What's that?
Was it hard to imagine? Was that the Beatles cover?
No, I got a feeling.
I got a
I got a
feeling.
feeling. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, they changed the lyrics around, and it was really cool though because it suited kind of what was happening right then. So when we were doing those demo sessions, especially the second round, Temple of the Dog was recording that record
Yeah.
at that time. So
Right.
yeah, Alive made it onto 10 from that session. Can't remember. I think that's the only one that made it on 10.
I can't remember what was on that 3 song.
Yeah.
It's a long time, man. I can't remember.
I'm gonna see if I can nerd out for a minute. It was Alive. Was it Footsteps and Once? It was kind of a trilogy lyrically, wasn't it? Those 3 songs, or is that wrong?
You
can't
mean the
remember.
demos?
Yeah, the original demo.
No, the 3 song cassette that came
Yeah.
out. You mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
that was the Beatles song, I Got a Feeling,
Yeah.
Okay.
and Wash
And Wash is okay.
and Alive. Those
Okay.
three.
And then how was
Got
the
it.
songwriting process for you guys? Did the members come in with full songs after the more established material on Mama San demo, or did you guys just jam out the rest of it, or were they pretty much hashed out? Somebody would come in with it, and you guys would just run through it.
Well, Stone had those songs.
Yeah.
He had
batch.
demoed some before it, Reciprocal,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep. And then so those were really kind of already formed, and then like we worked on them, but they were written and arranged pretty much just as he had them. Then Jeff had Jeremy, that bass line. I think he had some stuff like that. Release was done just completely off the cuff. We just started
Right.
that developed like that. Yeah, and then once Eddie got to Seattle, I think Porch, I don't know, I guess somebody probably had that guitar riff. That one kind of just really came alive, I think, when Eddie was there.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
Garden of Stone, that was something that really developed out of, I don't know how much of that. I think Stone started playing that thing. He probably had that thing or whatever. And then I remember we really worked a lot on that, and Jeremy, fleshing them out.
Yeah, me and my buddy were just talking about Jeremy because he's a bass player, and we're like, he was like, that was a 12-string bass Jeff was playing on. Was that true? Was that a 12-stringer he was playing on? Not many people were doing that kind of stuff back then.
That was a 12-string because I used to when you guys would go home at night and I'd be cleaning up, I'd go out there and sit on the piano bench and play it because it would not plugged in. I'd be playing it and it rang like a piano.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like in the live room, you could just pick and it sound, it was the strings and it sounded like you were picking on a piano almost.
He's the only one I've seen that play. You still don't see that very often. I mean, I never see it. Not in rock and roll anyway. It might be in jazz or something. But that was an interesting pick for him.
I think was it all like because of Tom Peterson, like the Cheap Trick?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he plays one.
Yeah.
It did back then. Yeah, who else? The guy in King's X. Did he?
I know he's so into King's X, must have.
Yeah, I know. Remember we went and saw them, me and Jeff, at where was that? I can't remember.
That's how I even
open
heard
for-
of King's X is because of that, because of you guys, because of Jeff.
Yeah, I went with him. I think I was the only one else that went with him. They were killer. They're a great band for sure. But I think he plays a multi-string, or an 8 or a 12 as well. But that thing was huge. I just remember the body that he was getting it made. I remember when he was having it made, and he was super excited to get that. And then it showed up. It had that weird finish, is all like
Yeah, it was weird,
black with looks like
like
lava
texture
or
or
something.
something on it.
Yeah, it's texture.
Yeah.
Badass.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember sitting on the piano and picking on it all the time, playing it when you guys would go home.
How were the tunings on that? That would have had to been tough to keep in tune sometimes, or when it goes out of tune. Jeez, what a nightmare!
Yeah,
It's probably
like
like a
I don't
12.
know. Everybody always thinks that with a 12 string, and I always go
Yeah,
on a guitar. I'm like, no, you just
it's fine.
yeah.
One thing that's intriguing about Seattle, it's like back then, and this is kind of what made it special too, because I remember when I started recording when I was young, straight out of high school, there weren't a lot of like professional studios in Akron and maybe in Cleveland, but I mean they were kind of out of touch for us. We couldn't afford to get into them. And the one thing about like Seattle is like you guys had like a couple really LA style recording studios with I did like London Bridge had the Neve boards and things like that. Like we didn't have anything like that. So can Dave, can you like kind of speak on that? And I mean Hillis, there's two Daves in this
Yeah,
one.
it's a studio guy.
Can you kind of speak on that a little bit? I mean, how many
Yeah.
studios did you record in or work in Seattle back then? Because I
Well,
think
you
that's
know,
kind of what
yeah,
helped push that scene. You had those really decent recording studios.
yeah. When I got out of high school, I started doing demos, saving all my money, and just getting into studios. And there was a lot of studios in Seattle for sure. In mid '80s, I mean, all kinds of 24 track studios. But London Bridge, when they opened, they were hurting for, there wasn't big records being made all the time or anything like that. So they kind of built it, you know, and then they came, there was a while there where they were stressing. So I think having bands so like, with Pearl Jam and Temple and, Love and Ice and things like that came in, and it was such a room designed for rock.
Right.
With the Studer and the Neve and just the big room and the way it was designed. Same designer who did Little Mountain in Vancouver, where tons of great records were done. British.
Right.
And so, yeah, Seattle has been, and it still is. I know leaving Seattle, and going to other cities, and finding that it was hard to find good studios to work in.
Right.
I took it for granted being there, but yeah, Seattle has a lot of great studios, and like I say, still does. And yes, it didn't hurt. I know, for me, when I finally got to London Bridge, before I worked there, and I went and took my band to record there, and it was like, oh, you could make a demo to get signed off of coming out of
Right.
there. It sounded
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it changed, definitely kind of changed everything. And Rick was engineering, and Rick was, amazing. But hard to get a bad sound out of there, out of London Bridge. But yeah, there was a lot of places to play and a lot of studios to record. So it was a good place to be a band. Did you think, Dave Krusen?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a lot of bands, I feel like.
Yeah.
Heart was such a huge band. It's like I think people,
Mhm.
people forget like they were just huge, massive
Oh yeah.
as you get, and I think that there were also just so many different types of bands going on. I just remember, being a kid and having friends, Greg Gilmore's from out kind of where I'm from out here. and we played like a battle of the bands, and he was, a couple years older than me. So I knew him. I was a fan of his when I was in like 8th grade, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
then he was in 10-minute warning with Duff.
right. That was like with me, like being fans of like whether it was some of the metal guys,
Yeah.
Atom Bomb, or the guys from Queensrÿche, a couple years older than me, or and yeah, and all the Battle of Bands were such ways of meeting all the other musicians.
And great players. I mean, there was
Yeah,
some,
everybody's great players.
it's
Yeah,
pretty crazy. Like the talent in the Northwest, just growing up, it's pretty cool. Like
yeah.
I had a lot of friends that were talented. I got to play with a lot of talented people, and
Mhm.
it was a real mixture. People were really cool about collaborating.
Right.
It was,
You also had like think David Kyle teaching all these great singers. You had like Rick Knotts from
oh
Rail
yes,
teaching
that's
all
right.
these
Yeah,
great
that guy
guitar
taught
players.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both of Rick Knotts taught all the great guitar players, and David Kyle taught all the great singers. It was
Yeah,
like,
everybody went to that guy,
yeah.
David Kyle. That's right. I haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Wow.
think about the great rock singers
It's crazy.
from that was because of David Kyle.
Amazing.
Right. That's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
it was there was a lot going on. I just remember like, so when things kind of ramped up, when the 90s started, it wasn't, I think for all of us, it was just like, well, yeah, we've all been
We're
kind
already.
of working hard at this our whole lives, and it's
Yeah.
like then other people caught on to it.
It was definitely a thing. Like no matter what you did, where you went, music was being promoted or done, or everybody had a piece of it. Feels like
Right.
it was just that was definitely the town to be in.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
was going to LA, but really it was blowing up there.
Right. Yeah. LA was probably floundering probably by the early 90s. So,
Well, they kind of got
Seattle.
stuck in that rut, and so that where up there we really had our own thing going on, and rules didn't really matter, and everybody was just allowed to express. And um, if you couldn't play, you could. I know when we started, we put our own shows on. We were coming from the north of Seattle, and we'd rent our own VFW halls or
Right.
wherever, do our own shows, all ages
Right.
shows, or
Yeah,
so
there was a lot of that too,
a
which
lot of
was
DIY.
yeah,
Right.
Everything,
yeah,
if there wasn't a place to play, you made a place to play.
yeah.
Now was that because there like not a lot of touring acts were going up there?
No,
Somebody
there
had.
was that too. That's the thing. There
Yeah.
was Seattle, and you had the 21 and over stuff. But like I said, when my first bands were coming out, we weren't really playing Seattle yet. We're playing all the suburbs. That's kind of where the metal
Right.
was.
Right.
And so yeah, you put your own shows on. Or on the east side had a place called Lake Hills,
Right.
and where all the tons of Battle of Bands, and they were kind of known as the east side was kind of the metal side, and the north end was kind of just, I don't know. That's where the crossover came from, really.
Right.
It's north end.
What sucks for me is like I was born like five years too early because I was there. I was in Orcas Island, in the San Juans, but I was only 11, so I missed all of that.
Oh
But I
yeah.
was right across the water. So gosh dang it. But anyway, we got it later across the country. But going back to those sessions, it's pretty well documented that some of the songs were a little difficult. Even Flow, it's famously, you guys had to do a lot of takes with that.
All day.
I'm sure you guys have
I
different.
just posted a thing. I was watching Hail Hail Rock and Roll. You know, Keith Richards did that
Right.
thing for Chuck Berry,
Oh yeah,
I saw
yeah,
clips. Yeah.
and they're interviewing him, and he's talking about one of his classic songs when they recorded it in the late 50s or whatever. He said that one took 46 takes, and I was like, what the fuck? And I
yeah.
found it and recorded it and posted it online. Like,
46
hey,
takes.
46 takes right there. Because I really
How does it feel to do that many takes? That's stressful after 20 takes.
yeah.
I remember just the stack of 2-inch reel of tape we had,
Yes, I do
because
too. I remember that. There was,
you
yeah.
guys were taking so many takes. And
Whose idea was it to do that many? I mean, I'm sure the first
well,
10 were
it
probably
was all
awesome.
you guys. You guys were, I know Stone and Jeff were all of you guys were so adamant about getting the one that felt right. Like that's what you guys were all
Well,
about.
and I will say we tried that song has a real kind of yeah, that tempo
Rhythm meter.
has to adjust and flow. We could have like tempo mapped it out if we
Hmm.
really want to get crazy, but I think a lot of the stuff we tried with a click track. I think
Oh,
Jared
did you?
ended up with a click track. Gar
Well, Rick, I know would always push for that.
Yeah, I mean, and I was all over the place. I was always stoned and maybe more than that. But I was always high and I was very like up and down. And so the even flow, I think we did it on the demo. It flowed really well. This is also an interesting take on this. So yeah, some of the stuff we try with that can account for some of the extra takes. Trying with a click track. That
Ah,
song, Even Flow, the verse to the chorus, it has to stretch in the
right,
chorus to make it feel like that. You can't
right,
put that one on to, you could, like I said, you could tempo map it, you know.
right.
I've done that with bands before. We did that on Happy Pills. We'd tempo map. Or actually, we didn't tempo map it. Ron Nevison would drop the click in the verse,
Yeah,
take it
that's what I
off in
was
the
trick.
chorus,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
kind of take off. And then I'd do a fill, and then he'd drop it. He was a genius at that. It was like you'd come down, like I'd hit the floor tom or whatever, and click. There it is. So,
Oh, wow.
but we tried to do it with a click. It didn't work. We went back to non-click. But another thing a problem I had, I was really picky about my stool back then, and I had this drum throne that it was a old Tama cheap throne, but
Right.
it sat flat. It didn't wobble at all. And so many thrones, really nice thrones still to this day. Like that you put them on there, you tighten them down, but then they wobble a little bit, right?
Right.
We played somewhere right
That,
before we started the sessions for 10. And the demos pretty much went well. We did it on my old Thomas Wingstars, and that was the thing too. Rick was like, "We're not recording with this kit."
Yeah, we rented that.
But
Yeah.
Alive is that drum set. So anyway, when we're gonna do the session, we're gonna get a better kit or whatever. And
uh-huh.
Keplinger was making me a
Yeah,
kit. Wasn't
that's
done, so we borrowed that Ludwig, which sounded great. It's a great kit. But anyway, we played
yeah,
somewhere.
that Noble Cooley snare, that was amazing.
Oh yeah. That was Gary Clark, who was the tech for Denny Carmassi from
Yeah, he was
he
awesome.
yeah, he was amazing. And I remember sitting there going, it's so cool. Like he's tuning it up and he's hanging out and he's like brought these snares, what a nice
Yeah.
guy. And Kelly was like, he's
You get
sending us,
paid for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
he's charging us. I was like, oh, okay. Um, but yeah, so my stool, we played, I think it was the one at the off ramp with Allison Chase. And I was really, it was a very wild evening, I'll say. And I don't know if I packed up my drums or not, but anyway, my drum throne, this one that I had that was just really solid, didn't make it. And I called a club and I went on to see it or whatever. So
Oh, no.
some other drummer probably went home with a different, you know what I mean? Or
Right.
whatever. So it was like, they was gone. That was that. So he had a couple of thrones, Rick did, right? And so they were like, but they were higher. That I sat so fucking low. That's the other thing is my stool was kind of busted,
Yeah.
inner part. So it went all the way down. And I sat low and all my stuff was tilted way back like this.
I
Wow.
don't
And
remember all this drama.
oh my God, so I was like, I don't have my throne. And oh, we've got a couple. So he had a couple of, and bigger, nicer ones than I had, but it's like they didn't go low enough. And I'm like, I don't, and then it's like, well, we'll find another way. They brought another one out.
Wow.
Okay,
I
this
would have
is
just,
a
I
little
would have
lower,
adjusted up a
but
little bit.
it wobbles. Just tighten it down, Dave. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, but then halfway into a song, it's starting to wobble again. They're just like, I remember just the dude, God. But I was like,
Well, hey,
I gotta, it's just, So
no.
that also, there were many factors why even took so long. There was the
Yeah.
click track thing. There was the stool thing. There was I don't want to get into whatever
Yeah.
You
else
remember
Well,
the
going on in
so
my
the end of
personal life thing. Huh?
so the end of the night, Rick was gone. He went home because you guys were still taken. So it was just me. and I'm recording you guys. I don't know if you know this one or remember. So,
Crazy.
so we're taking take after take after take, and it's gotta be like 1 o'clock or something at night, and then so you guys are taking it, and I'm sitting in the control room, and I hear the sound of the tape coming off the machine.
Oh man.
And I'm like, oh, well, they're gonna do it again anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And sure enough, you guys stop, and I hear, yes, that's the
Like
one.
we got it.
We
Oh,
got
no way.
it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
that's because
remember
I
this.
didn't tell people. Yeah, I didn't tell anybody. I told this in an interview for Mix Magazine. So first time I told it. So I'm panicking. You guys get up. You go into the. You're the first member of Pearl Jam I've told this to. You go into into the other room, into the lounge, and I'm like, this, can we come in here? And I'm like stalling you guys, going, let me just throw up a, a quick mix on there real quick. And I grabbed, so I was starring ones, because Rick told me to star ones you think might be good when we listen tomorrow.
Oh, is that why it splices on that last chord?
So I spliced at the end. It was after the chorus, which was good. But so that whole output is cut from another reel. And so I just kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to tell Rick or anything.
Yeah.
And then when we were doing, like, I don't know, overdubs, or this is days later or whenever later on, and so when there's a splice, as long as the music's up, you don't hear it. But if there's no music on, the tape machine's rolling, you'll hear it go past the heads, like, a really short little sound.
Really?
And Rick heard it and goes, did we do an edit on that? I go, yeah. Don't you remember we edited for that? And I just like
Yeah, man.
ate through it. So anyway, that I remember just panicking. The only other time I panicked was so weeks in, he had different takes, and that you guys picked, and there were some edits. And so there's so many reels of tape, right? We had all those reels, and so you'd have different ones cut, and you'd have on top of the machine, you'd have one over on that counter there looking out to the lounge, and I got lost. And like,
I bet.
I didn't know which reel I put where, and I had to call Rick. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. I think I can't find, I don't know which one is which. And panicking, and he had to drive out, and I figured it out. There was because that was the first real. Well, I worked in Love and Ice, and then just the very end of Temple thing, I was helping Rick, but that was the first real major label record I was doing. So where he was giving me that much room, and I fumbled the ball on that.
That's funny.
Here's a
Wow.
question for you. Was Eddie singing on all those takes? Or would he just
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Really? Dang, man, that's rough for a vocalist.
Yeah. And
He
like
even said
full
later
on,
that
too.
yeah, he said later if he would have known that he was going back
Yeah.
to like
I saw that on the Howard Stern.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Howard Stern thing. It's like, hey, now they you can do a guide vocal or whatever. He's like, man, you told me that back then. He was like,
It was good for him, though.
right to my
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Got some exercise.
but you know what? The thing is, though, that
but it gave you guys vibe,
yeah, if he hadn't have done that, I don't think the record would have been as good. So
Yeah.
Right.
like, I guess you probably wouldn't have to do that these days, but it helped back then for sure.
For sure. Yeah. It's
Help
a little
me.
bit easier nowadays. How many songs do you guys get on a 2-inch tape? I mean, I've recorded on tape too. It's been a
30
long
minutes.
time. 30 minutes for
Yeah,
each.
Depending
in
what-
Hovercraft though.
If you're
We did
it depends
60
if you're 15 IPS or 30 IPS. We always ran it.
Oh
30.
yeah. But the 30 when we did Hovercraft, we did 60-minute reels
Oh, those big. Oh yeah.
at
You don't see those
Bob
much.
Lang's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Those big giant ones. Yeah, Kurt Busiek at Fun and Bridge used to use those big giant ones.
Kids don't know what we're talking about anymore. They're all on the laptop.
No, yeah, I know. What is this nonsense?
I would love to go back and record on tape again just to do it. Because, I mean, with our project, with what we're doing with you, Dave, it's like, that'd be fun to just get back in and challenge ourselves a little bit. Just get
Yeah,
into the
more,
jam of it.
Pearl Jam's a perfect, for me looking back and trying to tell other people, that record 10 was a perfect example of how the art of making records is different now, and
Right.
how it was such a 2-inch tape type of a record. And I mean, in the sense of the workflow and how it was done and how it was tracked as a band. Um, like when people talk now about how it is working Pro Tools as opposed to how it was back then, that was definitely a classic record made in the classic way.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure all those early '90s records were kind of done the same way, right?
Well, yeah, but with this, I guess for me, it was seeing, I'm sure with you too, Dave, it's like we had some time, like more than, a couple days to make your, you guys had a deal. We had time. We had a real producer. We had a
Mhm.
great studio. We had
Mhm.
tape, extra reels of tape, as opposed to we got this one reel. We got to make it count.
Right.
Right. Yeah. We just have one. Oh my God. That's how I operated back in the day when we were playing
Yeah,
on
yeah.
tapes. Like we had one
So,
tape, man, and we had to go in and do a song and then erase it, and then when that one's done, and then do
and it
another one. So
and it the band held they were going in to make a great record. Like there was that intent and that
right,
intention there. I
right,
felt it um everybody involved. It was very it was a serious record. It felt like you guys was there to work.
It was
right,
serious, and there was a lot of pressure, because Mother Love Bone
Right.
hmm
Yeah, right.
record, you know what I mean? And so it had to be
And
really,
Eddie hadn't done it before, and
yeah, and me
right,
yeah, and
and Mike, was
and
really
Mike and I
definitely
yeah,
and
had
uh,
all that experience.
the other odd thing too for me was being on that side of the glass and then knowing Mike and Stone as guitar players throughout,
Mm.
the scene over in through the 80s and
hmm
you know, and then you guys are making a record and I'm there too somehow. And
yeah,
so, it's weird how it all lined up.
right. Just curious, like both of you, like I recently went back and re-listened to the 2009 Brendan O'Brien remix at 10. What do you guys think of that mix? Have you checked that out?
I
Uh,
think it's great. It's very
yeah,
different. And
yeah, it is very different.
I
Yeah,
do like what he did with it, but I still like the original a lot more just because I don't know if it's that I'm just used to it, but um there's a certain amount of space to it. It's got this different kind of thing. Like it's rock, it rocks, you know.
hmm
It, and Brendan O'Brien brought the guitars, seem like they're kind of more in your face. Things are a little grittier, you know,
right,
and it's badass. And I think it's great to hear it that way. But there's this, I don't want to say Pink Floyd, but there's this spaciness to 10, the original,
hmm
that that I really think helped create a sound that was different than any other band. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right,
Yeah, I
yeah,
feel Tim Palmer's mix of it was just the right mix for it at
yeah,
that
yeah,
time.
he's amazing.
Um,
That guy is
yeah,
like,
he's so
I mean,
good.
both those guys are obviously
They're
legends.
both so good. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like if you had to pick, okay, well,
right. Yeah.
I mean, they're both some of the greatest mixers out there. But
right,
I thought Tim's was, and me too. Maybe I'm used to it like that, but I think it was the right mix for the right time, especially for radio.
right.
Um, and it's funny. I was doing a tape seminar uh, in Nashville, and they were talking about the 10 record, and we're going to listen to 10 and talk about that. And they didn't tell me, they played the Brendan O'Brien mix, and
Oh, really?
I'm listening it totally not knowing, and I'm going, this, because I hadn't listened to the record in a long time, unless it's on
Right,
video somewhere or something. And I'm like,
right,
"God, this sounds so," and I'm sitting there and everybody's staring at me, because it's like an audience.
right,
And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, this sounds in my head, I'm going, this sounds so different than I remember. And I'm
right.
just baffled. Like, I remember, wow, this, I'm just tripping out on it. And then they get done, they go, And then we're talking about that. The whole questions are coming at me, and I'm just realizing, why does this sound so different to me? And then when it gets done, they go, "Oh yeah, what'd you think of the Brendan O'Brien mix?" And I go, "Is that what that was?" Like, oh my God, no wonder it sounded different. I had no idea. I thought I was just losing my mind. That sounds so different than I remember. But yeah, he uh yeah, it's good. Like it once just like I said, I think you're just so married to that other
Yeah.
version. And but I do think though it was the right call for that time and that period, I
Right.
think.
I think
There's
so,
the
man.
guitars are kind of in your face a lot more. It's like the original, it's like the drums and the vocals are very loud. The guitars are more like really cool textures and the layering and the
Right.
dynamic. You know what I mean? The placement.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tim's,
Uh,
it was wetter. He had, some more reverb and space in it.
yeah,
So
and the reverb and all that.
yeah. But any time past that, it could have been considered cheesy, but I think for that time and right for that record, I thought it worked perfect. It just
Yeah.
made that
The
record.
songs, the way that like the way Even Flow is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Alive for that matter. It's like um and Jeremy, those songs that really suited the songs, I thought, very well
Right.
because
Right.
they're not
Right.
it's not AC/DC type rock and roll that, you know what I mean? It's got
Mhm.
hmm
so
It was
many
big and epic. So
layers going. Yeah.
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 Lent
Yeah.
it.
It sounded so different too back then. I mean, I was like an early fan of 10. I mean, I was just a little kid, but I had it before it was even very successful. I can't even remember where I saw it, but I just remember how different it was for the time. But it had a class, it had like a timeless feel even back then. That was like, I've said this before on our podcast, but it's like that was like when our generation like really knew that this was ours. Like before that, we were always kind of like listening to the older sibling stuff, and when this stuff came in, it sounded so different than a lot of the 80s music that was popular then. So I mean, yeah, I think you guys are completely right on that. Like when it comes down to remixes, for me personally, I'm like, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'm like, that's the art, that's the painting on the canvas, don't mess
Right.
with it, you know. I thought
Yeah.
Brendan's mix was fun, but it's like, yeah, I agree with both of you. Like the originals, like where
What's
it's
weird
at.
too with talking about the space and the reverb and stuff on original mixes that Tim did is like for me walking around the room while you guys were playing and jamming because that room is so live,
Oh,
it kind of that's kind of how I was hearing it anyway. So the way he mixed it, it
yeah.
kind of
Yeah, you're right.
kind
There,
of
that room has so much natural reverb,
yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
live
great
room.
sound to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like if you had the doors open uh for the guitar room where all the guitar amps were, and you guys are working on stuff, and I'm running cables or whatever I'm doing, and I'm hearing you guys all playing. That's it was so ambient and live like that.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
a
it's
good
kind of
point.
funny
Yeah.
how that translated with him out
Sure.
not ever hearing it necessarily on that. But I
Right.
think you just turn up those two faders with the room mic, so
Mm-hmm.
it's instant London Bridge drum
What were
sound.
Yeah.
those mics way down at the end?
It's
Like,
just two Neumann U87s. That was like the standard boom.
If I'm remembering correctly from the pictures, I've never been there, but from the pictures, wasn't there like some kind of like half divider? It was about knee high
Yeah,
on
that
the
was just like a
pit.
cement.
little bulkhead kind of thing.
Yeah, it had like
Yeah.
planters and like just little
Bit on
cushions
it.
on it to sit. Why it was there, I don't really
Yeah,
know.
that's weird. I've never seen anything like that before. I didn't know if it had to do with
It
the sound or what.
maybe it created, for the kick drum, the
I don't
sound.
know if that was intentional or not, but
Yeah. I mean, they
I
sat
don't
on
know.
it and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that back wall,
The back wall was
that
intentional.
brick had that
Yeah.
angle kind of pointed
Curved
out.
to it.
Yeah, yeah. It just,
That
man,
was designed. That I know was designed. I just don't
that
remember.
room, nothing sounds like that room. It's
Yeah, I
so
can't remember the guy's
huge.
name who designed it, but like I said, he's a British guy and he designed
Oh,
Little Mountain room up in Vancouver. And I know Raj told me, who's the brother of Rick, that two owners of the studio in the building. He said the smartest thing he did was listen to him because he told him he built the room and he said, just make sure your meat and potatoes for the studio will be a Neve and a Studer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah, you can't beat an Eve, man. I mean, I've worked on one time, and it was awesome.
That one I've worked on a lot. I've been fortunate enough to work on a number of them throughout, America and in England. And that is still that one is still
Yeah.
the best known Eve I've worked on. And it's pretty much identical to the one that was at Sound City.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So but yeah, that one had the 1081 EQs and it was just so amazing. But yeah, I mean, it was just magical, the trinity there of the room, board, and the tape deck was.
You know, I was thinking
Of
too,
course,
like
the musicians.
alternate mixes. Like I was just listening to something the other day. I can't remember what it was, but it's like if it's an alternate, I would like to hear like a whole different version, like maybe a different take from the song.
Right.
Yeah,
Or
they
a
were so,
live
yeah,
take,
right.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Right. That
you
would
gotta
be awesome.
remix it or redo something. I mean,
Well, I
Well,
know
that's like when I worked on the first with Alice in Chains, they were doing the Dirt record and then they scrapped it. And
oh,
yeah,
I'd
and
love to do
I had
that.
and so one time Mike Starr was going home. He's like, "Hey, dude, can you just run me a cassette?" And I'm like, I don't know. I gotta ask Rick. And he goes, Rick's like, "Yeah, just go ahead and run him. Just make a mix for him. Go for it. Give it to him." So I did a whole mix of the Dirt record that we recorded.
Dang, you did the whole record?
Just to cassette, and gave it to
Wow.
Mike. And I look back, and then Mike used to call me, "Hey, can I get another copy of that? I really love that version you did." And I'm going, "Dude, I just made a cassette and gave it to you because I wasn't who, you know, it was just to get him out. Yeah, just get it to Mike so he'll go, and then we'll
Yeah.
move on." And I was like kind of bitching about it because I had to stay late and do it, And
Right.
now I looking back, I'm like, and Mike, like I said, he'd call me over different times over the years and like, "Can you get me a copy?" I'm like, "Mike, you gotta understand. I just made it to one cassette and gave
Yeah.
it to you."
Yeah, you
And
had
now
it,
I'm
dude.
thinking back, going, God, I could have had mixes of the Dirt record. But
Right.
to your point, Dave, is like, how different they were when you're just, they're just raw like that. And
wish I could hear that.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
I know. That's
kick,
bumming me
kick my
out, man.
it kills me not to have even, but when you're in the middle of things, then you just
Yeah.
didn't even take care. I mean, I wish I had pictures of. I remember when you guys were recording, I'd have all of Eddie's lyrics spread all across the desk,
Oh man,
with
that'd
my
be cool.
feet up and stuff. I'm thinking, God, it was nowadays, I would have just took my cell phone and, took a
Yeah,
picture of those
snap
or
one.
something.
Yeah.
I don't,
Well, you didn't know.
you
I
didn't
mean,
know. I don't have pictures of any of that stuff for that time, but
yeah,
I
I
got
find.
one roll I took
do you
with
really?
probably disposable.
Oh man,
Dude.
Yeah,
just
I
put
took
those on
some of
Instagram.
those. I took some of like the drum kit,
Yeah,
That was, oh, and there's a couple of the board, you know.
cool.
It's
Did
one
you
of
get
the
to keep that
reasons
drum
I
kit?
painted this purple. What's that?
Did you get to keep that drum kit or no?
No, no, I was just a loner.
Yeah, that's a
We,
shame.
we rented it and we rented some timpanis.
Yeah.
Across the street, I went over there with Kelly in a van.
Over at Al's Guitarville.
It was we
Oh no,
parking lot
Kennelly Keys across
yes,
the street.
Canelli
Yeah.
Keys. Yes,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
went
yeah,
over
yeah.
there and
I've
got
rented
like
timpanis. We rented timpanis from there all the time.
What
really
song are timpanis on?
oceans.
Oh yeah, okay. Man, I never really made that connection before. I'm gonna have to go back
Yep.
and listen to that on
I
headphones.
think because of that record, like I used to rent them all the time for anything I was producing. I'd have to fit timpanis in somewhere.
Yeah,
Sounds so
somebody
good in
would
that
be
room
timpani
too.
Yeah.
right here. And some roto toms. No.
When I
That's right.
recorded at London Bridge, I had Rototoms in '86 with Rick Fisher. And I'm setting my kid up. Is that Tom? I can't. And I put the Rototoms up and he comes in. He's like, no, no. I'm a dude. Yeah, come on. It's like, that's my sound over there.
That's my sound.
Not
You
anymore.
can't
It's
take those
not.
away from me, man.
I
That's
never used it
hilarious.
after that. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to people a lot
I have some
about
in.
Seattle and in that scene and stuff, and like all the years that have gone by, like people don't understand that weren't there, that weren't alive then, that they don't understand that that music wasn't really big yet, and a lot of people get there's conversation going around because there was a lot of like a pushback in the early 90s from some of the bands coming out of there because they weren't really expecting it. I mean, the whole success thing was like kind of broadsiding the scene, or at least that's from outsider looking in. So it's like, what I try to tell people is like, it wasn't like that back then. Like when people signed to a major label, I mean, oftentimes, you know, you can make a living selling 100,000 records and staying comfortably on the college radio circuit. So that's what like a lot of those indie bands were doing, and it wasn't really expected to blow up into multi-millions, you know.
Well, one thing I know with you guys, when you guys came in and started on the demos, I was totally confused. I was like, it didn't sound anything like what was going on in Seattle to me. Like I
Yeah.
certainly didn't think it was grunge, because at that time, the only thing, if you said grunge, even, I don't even know if we were using that word yet, but I would have thought Mudhoney or anything on Sub Pop. And you guys were sounding very much more rock to me, classic rock stuff. So I was
Definitely.
totally confused. Like, what did he like during the demos? I was like, what are these guys
Yeah.
doing? Like, I
The
don't
word
know about
grunge,
this.
I
This is
think
kind of
Tad,
weird.
you know what I mean?
What?
I think
Yeah,
Tad when
Tad,
I think
or
of the word.
any of the Sub Pop, Blood Circus, I remember, Mudhoney, like those what I would have thought grunge. Like you guys weren't like that, I didn't think. Or Green
Right.
River to Mudbone. Mudbone wasn't what I thought of as grunge, or Pearl Jam or grunge, but or
Was
even
it even
Alice for that
defined?
matter. But it wasn't defined, and then I guess it all got labeled. But when you guys were doing that, I didn't really know. Like I said on the demos, I didn't really know what to think.
Yeah,
You know,
it was different.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you guys were going
I
for
loved
it.
it. I was like,
It was
holy shit.
cool. I thought it was great. I just didn't know where you were
Yeah.
going with it.
Yeah, it was, I think pretty much immediately everyone in the band has such different influences, and then now
Hmm.
it's like more about that band and their influences or whatever. But
Hmm.
I think it really collided immediately, and kind of made it a little different, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
that kind of like just snowballed, that kind of all the different influences and
Right.
Stone's songs, and then putting them through that meat grinder, and they
Hmm.
come out that way. Yeah, and then
And
all
then
the way
obviously
through.
Eddie just brought a whole different
Yeah,
energy to it.
absolutely. And then
Right.
you guys engineering in the studio, it was like uh, I just remember there were mics on the bottom of my toms. There was shit everywhere. There were,
I kind of felt like it was still pretty classic. Like,
oh yeah, no, I remember he switched a few things out. We tried some different heads.
right.
And he switched the overheads once. I remember that.
Yeah, they were particular,
Or you guys,
yeah, I
yeah,
remember like being very particular, but there's records where we'd go way that I've done with Rick later on where we're much more all over
Hmm.
the place and doing a lot
yeah,
more experimentation. But I remember being, you know, we only really had those certain set of microphones, which were all great. They were all just the classic ones you needed to have. Like nothing
Right.
was, there was never too many of anything. But yeah, but always working with Rick is just very precise. You had to make sure we would, you know,
yeah.
be very clean about that sound. That sound
Yeah,
had to
that's the
sound
thing, that
right.
there's such subtlety captured,
Yeah,
which I really love, because all the ghost notes on the snare,
right.
like all that stuff is there,
Right.
and it's got a place. That's another thing I
Right.
like about the original mix, is like all those little nuances have a
Right.
place, and they
Right.
can kind of shine, and they're there, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
a,
Yeah.
even with guitars, like there wasn't a ton of stacking or over, like where, a record like Dirt where, there was lots of stacking, Dave
Right.
Jordan type thing, stack. With Pearl, you had your classic couple mics on, the Fender Twin and on the Marshall, and just,
Hmm.
a few specialty amp overdubs, but they're all like very classic things you
Right.
could do.
Y-
But
Yeah.
really time, really a lot of time spent on the EQ and the mic placement, and where it was just everything was very cleanly and properly done.
That's what kind
Yeah.
of bums me out about specifically drums now, and a lot of like recordings that are on the radio. Like they just taken out that nuance. It's just so buttoned up and on that
Well,
grid.
because you can just clean it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can
It's like, why
so
clean it up? I mean, keep that in there. That's
samples and everything else. But Temple of the Dog had the same thing. It was very just so precisely, but not overdone,
Yeah,
recorded.
Yeah.
great sounding record.
Did you I mean, kind of moving on a little bit, I guess after 10, you did a number of projects, right? But you went into Unified Theory. I just went back and listened to that record. That it's a shame because that's one of those bands that kind of felt like it kind of got lost in the mix a little bit after a while. But man, it's a really solid record, and I remember
You
the name. I remember listening to it. I remember having it. I'm pretty sure.
you guys
Did
were great live. I saw you in LA a couple
Thank
of
you.
times. It was so good.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
I
really
thought you
was
guys were. I thought
a
you guys would
really
be.
good live band.
I thought you guys were gonna blow up.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's like we toured our asses off for a year, I think. We really stayed on the road, played a
Mhm.
lot of shows. So yeah, we got to be a good live band, and it was a very complicated experience, I guess. Like the record was kind of cobbled together. It was all done on tape. Brad had a
Yeah.
studio, Brad studio. He had a
Right.
Brad had a, I can't remember what he had, but and they had good boards and cool stuff. And we did that. And then
Was
yeah,
that was that? Did you guys record the same place where their studio in North Hollywood? Was that the same place?
no, huh? These
No.
were
Okay.
their homes in Seattle.
Oh yeah,
Oh wow.
I've been to those. Yeah.
Christopher lived down the street from
Right.
me.
I
Brad
actually
lived in
lived. I
Eastlake.
lived down the street from Brad
Oh,
in
okay.
Eastlake.
In Eastlake, yeah. So we did both of their places.
Okay. Yeah,
They
I've been
had
to
some
those
other drummers
places.
because I was in Candlebox. So I did the first two, Cessna and the one with the crazy loop. Starts with a W. I can't remember. Anyway, we did two songs, and Happy Pills was done on tape too.
Oh,
At
nice.
the record plant in Sausalito, all the
Oh
drums
wow.
were done, and then we did all the
That
overdubs. And
record sounds really good.
It
yeah,
does.
Ron Nevison. I mean, that dude. Wow, he and all the experience, Zeppelin, Who,
Yeah.
stuff. So, um, but yeah, Unified Theory. We did that. Um, we put it out, and then we went on tour. We toured a lot. And I remember when we were trying to get a deal, we went to like New York, LA, and most the major labels were like, this is great. And we want you to go in the studio with like, a big producer, like just not to get too into it, but this person and
Yeah.
that. They were like, no, because they wanted to be the producers. So they were not open to that. And I'm like, dude, come on, man.
Yeah. Right.
Did you? Like we'd be at Atlantic in New York, and it's like, okay, we love it. We're super excited. And I felt like if we just do that, then they're gonna be behind it and really push it. So they were
Right.
like, no, but we were looking for a distribution deal, right? So then we ended up getting a deal, and it was like, yeah, do whatever, and we went to Vancouver to mix it. Yeah, we got a mixer and put it out. But the thing was, it didn't really take off, and we didn't really have any backing in that sense. We even met with Benny Medina, who I was like, we got to go with this guy because he met with us on a rooftop of a hotel in Beverly Hills. I was a little cold, and he's like, "Are you cold?" And I go, "No, I'm good." And he goes, "Get him a robe." And I'm like, oh,
A
yeah, I like
robe.
this guy. And not to mention, he was just cool. And he was like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He was the actual guy because he
Oh,
was
okay.
raised by, um, I'm blanking on his name, the Motown guy. He raised him.
Barry Gordon.
Yeah. And so he was just an awesome guy. And he was like, his whole thing was like, I can get you hip hop leverage. He goes, if I'm your manager, you're gonna, if it's like you want that because he represented like Jennifer Lopez, Will Smith, like a
Wow.
huge acts. And he's like, oh, you want their CD? Then you got to put Unified Theory on the same rack and all that. And I was just like, I love this guy. But we
Right. Right.
we didn't go with him. So we didn't have we went with
You needed that major label push back then.
yeah, we needed
Yeah.
Especially
something
back
or a
then,
guy
that
like
time
that.
period. That
Yeah,
time
because
period demanded
yeah,
that.
it was
Right.
tough. It was after the whole, it was when they were like putting out records. And instead of like getting tour support and building it, like, you know,
Mhm.
8 years before
I mean,
that.
that's like with my band, Civil Vein, they got signed to Island. Even with having, we had Lipman Entertainment Management and Island Records and stuff, and you had all that behind us, and we still we still didn't make it. It was like back
Wow.
then you needed. It was hard to compete if you didn't have.
Big
Yeah.
push.
Yeah.
And they were really pushing you after you had a song that took off and then you'd get the tour support. It was kind of
Right.
backwards that
Yeah.
the model they'd done it before. So we didn't have, although Tom Shadyac is the guy that signed us to, he had a deal with Universal because he was such a huge movie producer, director, so successful. They said, you can do anything you want. And he said, I want
Yeah.
to start a label. So we were like, we signed with him. He's the best guy to this day. I saw him like, I don't know, 8 years ago. He's just such a great guy. Anyway, he's like, I'll keep you on the road, absolutely. And he held up his end of the bargain. We were on tour constantly, but
No.
the single didn't take off, and then I
If the
think,
radio didn't pick it up, it's hard.
yeah. And so then it got to, they wanted to do another one, another record or whatever. And then Chris wanted to do his own thing. And
Oh,
so then
man.
everything kind of imploded there. And I had stopped at the end. We ran out of tour support. He kept us on the road for like a year, but then it was like,
Yeah. It's like,
you know,
okay.
at a certain point. So then I was like, I can't stay on the road, and
Right.
like make money. And they wanted to continue on touring and just like pay out of pocket and keep going. And I was like,
Right.
I can't afford to do that. So
Right.
we kind
So
of
we had the Blind Melon
disbanded.
success.
Right. And so, yeah. And so they started doing some other stuff and demos. And then I started working with them again. And then that's when Chris was like, I want to go do a solo thing or.
Gosh.
It's
After
a-
all that work,
And and it
it's
was a
like,
bummer too, because that second round, then they were like totally open to major label, like going in with a producer,
right.
kind of taking their suggestion on that.
Mhm.
So they were totally open to that. It was like great. And we were doing rounds of showcases. And it was
Oh,
going, and it was like
yeah.
cool.
Okay.
And it's like we're playing for major labels and yada yada. And then that's when Chris was like, I don't want to do it. I just want to go do my own. And Brad was like, that's it. It was like, that's when everything. That's what
That's such a
I can't
shame.
remember what club I saw you guys in LA, but it was fantastic. And everybody was there. It was like, totally packed, hot. I remember that.
All the Blind Melon guys were living in Seattle.
Yeah. Uh,
Well,
yeah, all of them weren't they? Or
Rogers
maybe Glenn
Rogers
wasn't.
lived in New York.
Right, because every time I was in New York, I'd see Rogers. Yeah,
Yeah, he's awesome, dude.
but Brad and Christopher did, and
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe one other guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd see Rogers, I'd see Shannon.
Did Shannon live there?
Yeah.
I don't know, but he was there. He'd be there a lot or whatever. But
Yeah. I'm just hanging out.
yeah,
He didn't he stay with you a lot, Dave?
a few times. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. What a
I
loss.
had fun with Shannon, that's for sure.
Yeah. He seemed like a fun guy.
He was
It
totally
seems like
fun.
he
I
knew how
love
to have fun.
Shannon.
Yeah. What a shame, man, to lose him. He was so unique, Blind Melon's got on to try and replace him. I was like, I just don't know, man. Like, how do you replace a guy like that? Some bands can do it, which is really weird. I mean, what's your guys' take on that? I mean, because, obviously Alice in Chains did it. And as a fan, I'm always like, man, I don't know about that. But then Alice in Chains does it. And the first song they release is like a 6-minute dirge, the Looking in View. That was their first one back without Lane. And I was like, oh, okay. I get it. They're doing it right. They're paying tribute. They're being respectful, and they're going out and doing it. But some bands can't do that for some reason. And you can there's no
Yeah,
science.
I don't know.
Kind of wild.
Definitely isn't. I don't know. I mean, go all the way back to when AC/DC did it. I was like, there's no way.
So I was gonna say that's like to
That
me
was the big one.
They went such a different direction that
Yeah, they did.
that probably helped. You know what I
Well, they
mean?
did. Yeah, they did and they didn't. I mean, it was
His
still
voice
so
sounded so
obviously, but it was so obviously still AC/DC.
Oh yeah, those songs.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. We're working on an AC/DC cover now, man, and I got a whole new respect for Phil Rudd, man. It's just he's
Yes.
such a weird drummer. I mean, he's very like tight. It's hard to explain. Maybe you guys can articulate it a little bit, but it's like I don't know. There's a lot of things going on there. It sounds so simple, but it's like his style is just so unique. It's like, oh man, AC/DC.
That's the genius, is when you can make it sound simple,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Oh
It's
yeah,
one of those things. It's just he plays like nobody else. It's like Ringo
right.
Starr, like Charlie Watts. They just
Charlie
play it like
Watts, yeah.
nobody
That's
else.
what I
It's
was gonna
like
say.
no, they're not playing complicated stuff,
No,
but
no,
they make it sound like the it's got its own thing for sure. It's like it's got a weird swing to it. I've heard
right.
people trying to explain Phil Rudd.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, oh yeah, I
It's
never
weird.
thought about it that way. But still, it's like I don't even want to think about it. It's just this weird organic compound and their chemistry too. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
another band, like they've had multiple drummers. I've seen them with probably
Yeah, that's
three
right.
different
Yeah.
drummers, including him. And it's like, it's different. It's not the same, but and it works because those songs
Mhm.
are just so great. But yeah, that guy has like a weird swing. That Let There Be Rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like back in his snare head breaks or whatever. And it's the kind of, and it's like, that's really cool because you really kind of like you get to see, you know, just his body language more, it's kind of like,
Right.
wow, it's that, yeah, he's one of a kind for sure.
Right. Yeah, man. Just good luck AI. Humans still know how to do it. To keep it that unique. I mean, I don't think AI
Well,
is
if
going to replace that.
throw a compliment to Mr. Krusen there. I feel the same with your playing, man. Your groove and your
Thanks, man.
style is.
For
That's why
sure.
I always tried to get you for gigs whenever I could, whenever I had the budget.
I
Yeah.
always appreciated it too, because I'm not a session guy. I'm not like, if you want it really solid and consistent, when
Right.
you're not
Yeah,
going.
but you know me,
Dave would always,
I
he would
always
always
like
brought
going
me
for
in
a
on
weird shit.
great things too. She'd be like, "We're gonna do this." Remember, like, Matthias,
Matthias, yeah, from
and
Germany. Yeah.
Dave's explaining to him like, and he wanted it to be a certain way, and Dave's like, "Just trust me." And he would like, and it was
Yeah.
like, it was not easy, and we would go
Right.
out, like, and then, but
Right.
it'd always be like, "Oh yeah, that's really cool." Like he'd always love it in the end, and Dave's like, "See, just let me just, I'll prove."
Well, it's kind of crazy because he's this really tall German guy, like right from Germany. Never been to the States before. And we fly him to LA and take him to Brad and Christopher from Blind Melon's place in North Hollywood and get hire Dave and just like we put it all together for him. And he's really artsy anyway. So
Mhm.
I thought we could get, because he's a painter and all this stuff. But it was a roll of the dice, but I was just like going for it. It's like I was producing, so I'm like, all right, this is what we're
Yeah,
gonna
because
do.
he had some demos or something, and then you took it in another direction, and he would just get all really nervous and like, I don't know, I think we should kind of go back to, and you're like, no, 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 just trust me. And then we'd do stuff, and we would get way outside the lines, and so, and they would, but in the end, it would be like, wow, this is way cooler.
Well,
Yeah.
he was so outside the lines anyway. I figured
Yeah,
that
yeah,
if you're gonna go out with anybody, that's the guy to do it with.
yeah. No, you got some great stuff there. I remember that.
Nice. Yeah, that was fun.
Well, a band that changed their drummer. Let me think about it for a second. Oh, Candlebox. Yeah. How'd you get that gig? I mean, like I said, I saw you guys when on the Happy Pills tour, and I think Mr. Hillis, you probably want to know about these sessions too. But the sound of the band definitely changed when you came in, Dave. I mean, because
Yeah,
Scott Mercado was more. He was almost like a funky jazzy guy, you know, if that's the right description. I mean, just real tight, you know. And you kind of like when I saw you play with him, it was like a little more airy, a little more jammy feeling. And I thought you were a perfect uh uh compliment to that band when you came in, and them adding another guitar player too. That was a fantastic show. But what's even better is Happy Pills. I mean, I was a fan of Candlebox before that, and when Happy Pills came in, it really felt like a rebound for them. From the second record. Although the second record's great, but it's like it was just like a switch of gears. How did you
did
get
you
that
work on
gig?
that, Dave?
No, I just I was always around during the Candlebox stuff, but the only I worked with Kevin on all the solo stuff.
Oh, that's
But,
right. Yeah, we talked about
yeah,
that a while ago. Yeah.
but yeah, no, that was
No
Kelly.
Candlebox. Yeah.
No, I was around sessions at the studio because when they would work with Kelly Gray
Yeah, that
at
was a
London
London Bridge too,
Bridge.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I met
did you guys did Happy Pills in LA, right? Or California?
yes, and well, Sausalito the drums.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had met Kevin through, how did I meet Kevin? I met Kevin and Christopher Thorne around the same time. Kevin introduced me to Aaron Saravo, and we had a band called Diamond Star Halo.
Oh, that's right. You were in Diamond Star Halo.
And Kevin liked my drumming from 10. And so we became friends and just kept in touch. And he introduced me to Aaron, and we had a band for a while. And then I did Hovercraft. And then at a certain point, Kevin got a hold of me and said, "Hey, can you come in and, play some drums? It's not working out with Scott." And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And so I did. And, everything clicked pretty much right away. And yeah, they had been working on the record. They had a few of those songs for Happy Pills and looking for a producer. So we like had different producers come in, and we'd be working on the record. And it was so great. They had that space. You remember that space they had under Moss Alley Motors in Seattle? This
Yeah, yeah, giant.
huge room. It was insane.
Kevin always has a big
It
rehearsal
was
room.
so great. Like walking in there and being like, "Whoa, this is different,"
It
We're
was the
not used
same.
to this at all.
It was the same when I went to LA to work with him on the solo stuff, and yeah, that huge. Where you came and played on some
Yeah,
stuff
in
with him, yeah.
Hollywood, that
In
great.
Hollywood, yeah,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
awesome.
He always has like this awesome.
Massive room.
Yeah,
Yeah, he knows how to take
hooks you
care
up.
of himself. He always has
Yeah,
the good stuff.
yeah, he knows how to get it going. But yeah, so we started working on the record, and we had different producers come in, and so we're working on that all the time, like pretty much every day. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden they go, "We have a gig, we have 2 gigs," and I'm just like, "Oh," and they're like, "They're next weekend," kind of thing, and they're
Oh my God.
festivals in front of like thousands of people, and I'm like, "Okay," and they're like, "Just listen to these songs, blah blah blah," and they're
Yeah,
not,
yeah, yeah.
because they know the songs inside and out. And I remember we played in Memphis, Mud Island Amphitheater, and uh, I was just like, Pete, grabbing him like, "Give me the how's this song start?" Like the first one on the set.
Yeah, yeah.
He goes, I'm like, "No, dude, I'm serious. Hum it to me." Like he's like, like whatever with the guitar. And I was just like, okay. And we played, and I got, and I would smash my kit all the time back then. And I leaped through my drums, and it's not the last song. So the drums go
Oh
flying.
no.
The monitor was a real, I guess Pete was pissed at the monitor situation or something. So I go flying through my drums. The drums go flying everywhere. And it was a rental kit. So it was just like a 2-off or whatever,
Oh my gosh.
Drums go flying. Pete's pissed off at the monitor guy, starts smashing, and I go tumbling, and I land into this concrete stage, and I was like, "Oh my God." So I was like, "Oh, injured." I go down to the dressing room. Kevin comes down laughing. "You want to end it?" He goes, "That wasn't the last song." I go, "Oh,
Yeah, it was though.
whoops." It was one song early, and he goes, "That's all good." Pete's up there smashing the drums right now. So Pete got all pissed off at the monitors, took the drums, started throwing them around, knocked over like stacks of Marshalls or whatever, trashed all the gear, and then that was that. And our manager and the guy from Smash Mouth almost got into it.
Oh wow.
Because the Smash Mouth guy was pissed at Pete because he was smashing the gear. And then our manager was, John Reese is this huge, he used to work for Guns N' Roses. He's a
Yeah.
big, scary, badass dude. And so that was a whole thing. And then it was on. That was it. It was like, okay, this is going to be fun.
Right.
We had
I
fun
was
playing.
in I was in a band briefly with Pete way back pre Candlebox.
All
Oh
right.
yeah.
Yeah. He came out on stage with barefoot, and I was like, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. And we butted heads over that, and that was like the end of the band.
Well, I saw
Really?
Candlebox.
Yeah.
I saw Candlebox in like '93.
We played
I
Coco, I think. Go ahead,
was
sorry.
I was trying to get Kevin on the last podcast, And I think I was talking to him through Instagram or something, and we started talking. I was like, "Yeah, man, I saw you in '93 in Cleveland." It was like at the Agora, and he's like, "I remember that show. That's when we went gold." And they came out with the gold plaques and stuff. I was like, "That is right. That did happen. I forgot all about that until he told me." And I was like, "Man, I saw a little bit of rock and roll history there." But I think tickets were like $8.50. It was totally such a cool show to see when you're 16, 17 years old. But it was
Yeah.
awesome that he remembered that.
Yeah, when I was in Civil Vein, my band for a while, he was like the first person like to offer to take us out or have us open for him and give
Oh,
us
so
a
you
shot.
toured with
'Cause
him?
we didn't tour, we just did I think we did but we did some big shows. We did like 2 nights or something at the Moore Theater in Seattle, and then like did like New Year's Eve in Portland with them, like big sold out stuff, trying to help us get
Yeah,
That's
our
nice.
thing rolling and stuff.
that's
It was-
awesome.
Yeah.
We played their record. I don't know if it was their record release. It was at the Weathered Wall when I was in Son of Man.
Oh, okay.
So it was like 93, I think.
Yeah,
That
Yeah,
was
that would make sense. Yeah.
that was a fiasco of a gig for us. And
yeah,
I remember it was, but that was
Weathered Wall was kind of a
they
fiasco.
yeah, they just signed with
Maverick, right? Yeah, it was right
think
then.
like
Yeah.
that week or something.
Yeah, and like that year later is when my thing was happening, and they were, already had a
loaded.
bus. Yeah, they already had a
Yeah,
bus and everything, and offering to take us out. So
yeah, that's a great offer. Yeah, just curious, Dave. You recently posted on Instagram a session. It was just probably like last week that I caught, and it was a picture of you in a studio with Eddie Kramer. What was that session? I just thought that was badass. I was like, "Whoa, he worked with Eddie Kramer." No
Yeah.
kidding.
All right. Yeah. Ryan Hewitt, he's a friend of mine. He's a great guy, amazing engineer also. And he called and said, I'm gonna go into East West. It might have been Ocean Way that week.
Oh, gee, never heard of that one.
Is that right, Dave? Is that
Jeez.
also Ocean?
East West.
That picture that I posted, it was that big, like Sinatra. They did
That would have
pets.
been Ocean Way. I think it was Sinatra.
Yeah,
Okay, then I think maybe that was it.
that's where Jack Puig works, right? JJ Puig.
Yeah, he did. The
Produced
He
one,
did, yeah.
yeah, the
We,
one that was
we
the one on Sunset.
yeah,
Yeah.
Unified Theory. Actually, we went and talked to him, and I
Yeah.
remember
That would
I
have
had
been a
my
good record. That
I
would
had
have
my
Yeah,
been a great
man.
disposable.
record, man.
Yeah, the gear he had was, oh my God.
Yeah,
And
I
the,
was
Oh
in
my
I was in
God,
that
yeah.
control room. Me and Rick were
this,
down
the
Ocean Way, and I walked
Yeah.
in
those
there and sat there where he sits and was just
dude, the gear like to the ceiling,
you had to
right?
step
All those
over. You had to
racks.
step
Yeah.
over. Like things I was stepping over that were just laying on the floor were like prized pieces of outboard gear.
I asked him,
Yeah.
can I take a picture? And he goes, don't post it on the internet. I'm like, I'm not even on the internet. Like this was
Yeah,
Unified Theory was there because we were going to have him mix our record.
Wow.
We ended up having God, I can't remember his name now. I'm bad. But we went and hung out with him. And he was like, don't post it on the internet. And I said,
Yeah.
I won't. I had a
What is that?
disposable camera.
Yeah.
And I took a picture of it, and it was like a month later, he was on the cover of Mix magazine. It was the
Magazine,
same
yeah,
kind of
I
angle.
totally have
That
that.
room though
Yeah.
was like, holy shit. But
Yeah, it
anyway,
was
we
amazing.
did that thing with Ryan Hewitt was doing, they were doing a class for engineers. And he got Eddie Kramer to do it. So Eddie Kramer's like, get a band together and bring them into the studio. That's the best way for everybody to learn. So he goes, do you want to do it? And I was like, hell yeah. And so he's like, you got something and I called Brad. It's like, let's do a band and jalopy thing. Let's go in and do this thing. And Brad was totally into it. So we go.
I ended up mastering that record.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Jeez.
So Eddie Kramer, the best part was he came to my house. He wanted to do pre-pro.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah. And he goes, do you have a space or something like that? And I said, my house. And he goes, what's your address? And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Kramer's
right.
going to my house. And I'm taking all these pictures. I had him sign my Jimi Hendrix album.
I got the
Oh,
Eddie Kramer story.
But so, and he was a super sweet guy. And we're playing, and I have this 26 by 12 old, like from the 20s bass drum that's in that photo. And it's like up
Big
on
one.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, it was up on this like ledge thing in my room. And he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's my old bass." He goes, "Let me hear that."
Yeah.
So I
Right.
and it had the head on there, and I don't know how old this front head was, not the batter head, but and
Right.
he goes, so he's like, "Play that one. I like that one." So I brought it to the studio and we're gonna play. And he goes, "I put this thing in every bass drum." And this bass drum I have is like brittle and old, and it's like super thin wood. And he's got this brick like thing covered in
Oh my
tin.
God.
It looks, and it's like, what, isn't that just a brick covered in tinfoil? He's like, no. Like it was just lead. I'm
It's
gonna get
special.
lead poisoning. So he cuts a square hole in that front head. And I remember just going, dude. And and everybody's always commented, "What's with the square hole?" Anybody that's seen that drum since.
Right.
I'm like, Eddie Kramer cut
Did
that.
that.
So it's
Yeah.
right. You know what I mean? And he put that thing in there and he mic'd the kid up and we play. And that was so fun. And Dave, you would have loved that because he had so many, he was just very, for all the like technique and the, the history that all these things he's done. And
Mhm.
it was just very about, you know, people, the human aspect of it and,
Right.
So
energy. It was great.
I got one Eddie Kramer story. So I'm working with Greg Dooley at from the Afghan Wigs at Electric Lady in New York, and so I'm pretty stoked. It's Electric Lady. It's cool, and I'm there early, of course. He doesn't, Greg wouldn't show up to the studio unless it was like 11 o'clock at night. So I'm there at 10 in the morning, just hanging around all day, talking with the studio manager, things like that. Um, and all of a sudden, Eddie Kramer walks in. See, we're sitting in the office, and like I know who he is. I recognize him. I don't say anything. I'm just sitting there and
Right. Just chilling
hanging
out.
out and all this. And he goes, and then we get introduced, and he said, were you working in Studio C upstairs? Because I heard the door open, and uh, were you doing the mic trick? Which is, if you're up there, there's the hallway that goes up to the roof, and if you put a mic in there, you get this, huge drum sound, and it's like this
Hmm.
thing. So I'm like, yeah, I had to try it. It's if you're an Electric Lady, you got to try that. And he
For
goes, yeah,
sure.
yeah, and he's like, oh, that's cool, it's cool. He goes, you've, what are you doing now? "Oh, I'm just waiting for clients. They won't be here for a while." And he said, you want to hear what I'm doing? And I know who this is.
Yeah. Right. You're like,
And
yes.
I'm like, sure. And so we go into Studio B. I sit on the couch and he starts pulling up, and he's got tapes, and he's got all these different size tape machines in there because he's
Hmm.
doing remastering of Hendrix stuff.
Oh, wow.
So he starts pulling up faders, and I'm hearing, Jimi Hendrix talking into the mics and stuff, like saying stuff in between takes and
Nice.
pulling up, soloing things, and I'm just sitting there going, just freaking out. I'm by myself in Electric Lady, Hendrix
Yeah.
studio,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
facing the back of Eddie Kramer at the board while I'm hearing Jimi Hendrix's voice, like being soloed up and talking on these outtakes, you
That's
know,
amazing.
yeah, it was just like, wow.
Yeah.
That's an
Who do I tell this? It was just like, what an insane moment. But yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Was
That
it
was
unreleased
by Eddie.
stuff?
It was stuff that he was preparing. I don't know, some remastered record. They were,
Right. That's a lot of it. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know what ones. All I know is he was pulling it up, and I'm in the room alone with him, listening to him. It was like amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Jeez, great story there. Well, Dave, you got a new song out, man. Let's talk about it. I just listened to it a few times today. Manifest Love. Where's that coming from? What are you doing with that? What are your plans for with that? Just having fun?
I'm just fucking around.
Yeah.
I mean, I always have.
Cool
I had a
song.
reel to reel back in '95, I think it was. I had a Mac. I still have it. The Mackie 1604 VLZ, which is a hot item now, I
It's a
guess,
classic.
because
It's a classic.
some band, like, God, who is it? Some cool band recorded all their stuff on it. And my son, who's like, he's next level. He's the really talented one in the family. He's Jagger Finn. That's what he goes by. That's his middle name. Check him out. He does very well. He lives in New
I
York
will.
and does his own thing, and he just kind of co-produced a record.
Okay. Definitely check him out.
Roy Baker is his name, and my son's like he wrote some stuff with him, and he's got some producer credit. But anyway, he was like, "Hey, is that board we have is the PA board kind of thing? A Mackie, you know what?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's the 1604 VLZ." And he goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, let's keep that." And I was like,
Yeah,
he goes, "Oh yeah."
when Blind Melon first came in the studio, when they first came in, I was helping them load in and everything and getting set up. And they had a rack with the Mackie board, and I guess they were doing like all their early demos with that board.
I mean,
So
Wow.
I got
there you go.
this. Yeah, I had that board, um, and a little power amp and two Elisa speakers
Yeah.
and a reel to reel. I think my first one was a Tascam 8-track reel to reel, half-inch tape. So I got that
Wow.
95 and I was just like, wow. And I remember like going down there in my pajamas and I would come out, my wife at the time's like, damn, dude. Because I would come out at like 10 at night, just like, I'm hungry. Like I would get so into it. I had no,
Yeah.
I bought a
Quite
4-track
quite
one.
familiar.
But yeah, I got into it and I was messing with stuff and I had, tracks to work with. And I'd always had like a guitar and I
Yeah.
had a bass and stuff like that. So I would just start doing random whatever. This is back
Right.
then. So I've kind of always done that. And
Right.
then recently, I've gotten some more gear. I got like a lunchbox full of like APIs and I got a Neve thing and some
Hmm.
I got some Neumanns finally, Dave.
Oh,
Some
nice.
the little condensers, the 480,
KM.
40, yeah, KMs. So I got some decent mics and I got some good pre's now and I got this tube compressor. So it's just kind of I've added stuff, but it's
Right.
mostly just I'm just, I'm not
Messing
out to
around.
like make songs. I'm not a songwriter or anything. I'm just having fun. And my son, like he got offers, but he turned them down because he's put his stuff out by himself.
Right.
So he gets all this dough, right? So I just asked him like, how did you who because I had a studio at my other house, California, and
Hmm.
he would go in there and just work. And I'd be like, can I come in and play drums for like 10 minutes? I gotta learn this song. Yeah. Had to book time. And I'm like, you better be doing something good. And he did. But I asked him because I was like, who mixed your stuff? And he goes, I did. I go, "Well,
Wow.
who mastered it? I did. What? Like,
Yeah.
how'd you put it out?" And he goes, "Oh, I went on this site and da da da." And I was like, "Really? That's kind of cool. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
do that just for fun, just to put something out, right?" Because
Right.
just most of my stuff's just instrumental, weird, just whatever, right? Just
That's
random
cool though.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I put a tune out because I was like, okay, I went on there. And it's fun because it's like, oh, you get to pick some artwork, grab a
Right.
photo or whatever. So
Right.
it's really fun. And they have a little mastering thing you can run it through
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
website. So I
Yeah.
did one and I was just like, so now I just kind of keep doing it and I've got stuff. And then, and I've never sang on anything, but I was like, I think I'm gonna sing on this one because I had that ready.
Nice.
And I have a interface, but I bought a little tiny 2-channel or a 1-channel. I think it's one,
Okay. Yeah.
so that I could go sit out in the living room with my pets and hang out and just mess around out there with my guitar.
Right.
So I grabbed a mic. I grabbed this 421. This isn't really a vocal mic, but I was like, it was the nearest to me. So I just unplugged it and I brought it in there. And I was just like watching Daniel Boone was on. And I was just kind of like, I'm making up. I don't even know what I'm singing, but I just kind of like, I had a little melody. And then I tried this auto tuning thing because I can't sing. And I ran it through that. And I don't know if it did anything or not. Because I was kind of trying to get that, when auto tune does a weird,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're
I
the
was
hard
like, I'll
tunes.
do that. Then it's obviously like I'm auto, but I don't even know how to work the app thing or the
Right.
plugin. So I don't know. And I
So
tried
there's
to
not,
a bunch of total like
That's how you end up doing
awesome.
something that everybody now wants to copy because it's like they think
yeah,
you did it all on purpose.
yeah.
Well, how
It's
do you
just
do
an accident.
that?
It's gonna
But
be a
my
hit. You're gonna
computer
be
was crashing because I'm like, I'll put all this stuff. I've got all these plugins, right? I've got the UA stuff, which is pretty
Yeah.
fun. So I got this one that's got you can put so many effects right on your vocals and it kept crashing. I was so bummed. But I sang into that and I had the reason it's pink and red is I was gonna do it because DistroKid sends a thing. Oh, put out some music for, you know what I mean, to all their.
yeah.
Here comes Valentine's Day. Put
Oh
a
yeah,
song or something. I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do that. So I had a friend of mine help me with the artwork, and that's why it's pink and red and everything. But it didn't. I wasn't able to put it out that day. So
right.
that's what I'm doing. I'm just fucking around, and in between gigs, I'm looking for a gig. I'm like, kind of was like, I got to get out of California, and then I moved up here, and it's great because my family's up here.
Right.
So I'm loving that, but it's like I gotta get back to LA. So I'm going down next week and I gotta get back at it. Like
Yeah.
it's too isolated. Seattle's
Yeah.
great, but it's like I was in LA for 20 years.
Oh
And
wow.
I have a lot of friends down there and I still work with some and it's I'm just kind of ramping back into getting back to work.
That's cool.
I retired for about 6 months and I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah. Nobody
Can't
retires.
really afford to retire anyway. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, nobody retires. Well, what if this song's a hit, man? Then you're gonna have to go out and play it. You
yeah,
know?
no, that wouldn't happen.
I thought it was fun. I listened to it like 3 times, like I
Thank
said. And I
you.
was like, ah, it's
Right
a cool
on.
little song,
Yeah, I
man.
liked
That's
it
a
too.
hit.
Right on. Yeah, thanks, guys. It's just fun to like. I'm not a guitar player,
Yeah.
you know. I just figured out the MIDI keyboard. I've been doing
Right.
this keyboard. One of the keyboards I have, you can plug into like a guitar, like into the interface or
Yeah.
whatever, or a preamp, and through the headphone. And then it's just got some cheesy sounds, but then you can mess
Yeah.
it up once you
Right.
get into the computer, right? So I was doing that, but my son's got one of his MIDI keyboards is still here, and I was like, I want to use this one because some of these plugins, it's an actual like you see the B3,
Right.
Yeah.
looks cool. So I figured that out on I think that thing that I just did has some MIDI stuff on it.
Okay.
So
Cool,
it's
man.
just, yeah, I'm just having fun, like messing around. I got it. I have like better gear than I ought to have. My ex-wife works for Gibson, so she kind
Right.
of out with it.
Hooking you up.
I got a Les Paul 68 reissue custom.
Ooh, nice.
Nice.
It's nice.
Very nice. Yeah.
And I got
You
I got a P bass and I got some stuff like that.
you sound like me and all my friends, man. I mean, we're all independent bands, and I do a lot of the artwork and stuff for our band, and I love it. I love that process of that. I'm not an artist, but I'm just using the tools at my disposal and coming up with pretty fun
Yeah,
stuff and buying
awesome.
guitars and messing around with that stuff too. So that's really fun to hear that you're just tinkering
Yeah,
around. I'm doing the same thing. I'm sure
I
Dave, you're
love
doing the same thing too.
the
Same thing.
artwork thing,
Same
coming up
thing.
with a title, especially instrumental
Fun.
stuff. It's
Yeah.
like there's no lyrics, so it's um and then the thing I just did, I had the idea for the title before I had anything to sing. But yeah, the artwork, that's to me, it's like at least half the fun. It's just
Yeah, it's the whole process of the whole
yeah.
artistic side of it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing that I'm enjoying, like I want to get to the point where if I have some stuff, I want to get my friends to play on it, they
Yeah,
know what
that'd be
I'm
cool.
doing, have it sound a lot better, and then have you, go in the studio with you sometime or have you mix
Yeah.
something. Like, I do want to do that. The only
Yeah.
reason I haven't done it thus far is because, being a drummer playing in bands my whole life, I've always collaborated.
Mhm.
And this is just something, a little art project I can do by myself. It's fun to just like,
Right.
there's nobody going, that sounds like shit.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where that's where I have
It's
fun
just
with
like,
doing all my electronic stuff. There's no rules. I can just make beats
Right.
and sounds and sound design and
Dude,
Yeah.
all this,
Do
I love
whatever I
all this
want.
stuff. You've been like going to town, man. You got some
Yeah, yeah, I have fun with that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
that
jealous,
stuff you
man.
posted.
Being in a band is tough, man. You have to deal with other people. It's like,
Exactly.
I don't want to hear your opinion right now. It's constant negotiation. I mean, that's what I'm always doing with my guys. So,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. Well, fellas, we've been talking for over an hour and a half. I guess we can
Do
shore it
some
up here.
editing.
Yes, sir. Well,
Yeah,
both
great.
Daves, I appreciate you talking to me. Let's do it again sometime. This was really, really, really fun.
Totally.
When you have some stuff you want to release, and just let me know. We'll talk some more. That'd be awesome.
Sounds good.
I appreciate it, fellas.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right.
Good to meet you and great to see you, Dave.
Nice
Great
meeting
seeing
you.
you too. Melissa says hello too, by the way, Dave.
Oh, right on. Yeah, tell her hi.
Awesome.
She
Sweet.
says hi.
Thanks again. I appreciate it. And Dave,
She's in the room.
I'll see you on the 28th in Pittsburgh, man. We're gonna meander around
All
town.
right,
Check some
sounds
stuff
good.
out. All right, fellas, have a
All
great
right,
night.
thanks,
and
you
Thank
guys.
you again. Appreciate it.
All right.
Right on.
Bye.
See you guys.